Okay, we're here to talk about Black Mirror Season 7, Episode 5, titled Eulogy. This episode written by Charlie Brooker and Ella Road and directed by Chris Barrett and Luke Taylor. A single middle-aged man named Philip, played by Paul Giamatti, learns from a company called Eulogy that his ex-girlfriend Carol from long ago has passed away and that the family is looking for people who have photos of her to contribute to her memorial. Philip initially says he only has a couple, but eventually reveals that he has many. And he has, in those photos, he has obscured or ruined Carol's face in just about all of them. Eulogy says that their technology can let him enter into the photos and remember better what was in them and what Carol looked like in each of those moments. A female named the Guide leads Philip through the photos, where we learn how Philip and Carol met. We learn about their long relationship, and eventually learn about Philip's infidelity when Carol went to London for work. Philip also has a photograph from the trip to London that he planned to propose to Carol, but that ended up not happening. Carol walked out, and we find out she was pregnant with a daughter. That daughter turns out to be the Guide, and she was born after Carol slept with someone to get back at Philip. Philip finds a camera from that London trip that has a photo of the hotel room he trashed after Carol walked down on him. In that photo, Philip is able to see a letter that Carol wrote. She wanted forgiveness, she wanted to be with Philip, and she asked him if he felt the same to meet her that next day. That did not happen. Philip now realizes that what he missed out on. He's filled with guilt and regret. He never knew about this letter. So he does end up going to Carol's funeral, where he sees not only her daughter there, who was the guide playing the cello, but also all the other guests wearing the Eulogy technology. Um, so again, more of this. We've had a couple of these, quite the emotional component to this, in addition to, some interesting tech and sci-fi aspects of this episode. Um, I think more than anything, I just want to talk about this idea of Paul Giamatti and talking about how excited he was to play some kind of role in a Black Mirror episode, and they really did find the perfect spot to put him.
Yeah, he's great in this, as always. I'm always a big fan of Paul Giamatti, um, but he does a great job of being this character who, at this point, is kind of I was going to say lonely, but I don't know. We don't really see much of his day-to-day life before he gets that phone call. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not necessarily imagining he's always walking around sad and lonely, but he's living this solitary life, and there's Giamatti always does a great job of portraying that kind of subtle, um, I don't know, sadness or discontent or whatever, just like kind of behind his eyes, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with that look and that sense of we get a little bit of context. We have no sense that he has any other spouse or he has any other family. We just find him living alone, tending to his rose garden before this news come about his ex-girlfriend who has passed away. So I think we're just sort of presented with this idea of who he might have been or who he has been for all these decades. And it does seem like a um not a tormented character, but just a sad, resigned character. And I think putting the pieces together from the episode that maybe this had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, yeah. That at least that's how I read it. That
Mhm.
ultimately it was for him a matter of kind of resigning himself to, like, one gets the feeling that overall he really did view Carol as the love of his life, and then got really angry and everything, but then ultimately resigned himself to the fact that that fell apart, and that he was never going to find another one. Right?
Exactly.
It seems
Yeah.
pretty clear to me that he is a single middle-aged, upper middle-aged. I don't know how old
Mhm.
Paul Giamatti is. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure he's older than me, so he's probably at least in his 50s or
Certainly
above.
so. Yeah.
Um, but I really did enjoy this episode. I thought it was very poignant. I mean, it was really a gut punch, um, in some ways that I definitely want to hit on, but I almost don't know how, you know. Maybe let's start talking about the technology a little bit
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
Um, because as you mentioned, so he's contacted by the eulogy company. Now, I think you mentioned that they through the technology with I think they call that thing a nubbin in the
Oh
Black
yeah.
Mirror universe.
Yeah.
Um, through that tech, they can enter photographs, which is very interesting.
Mhm.
But I believe the backstory is that they're actually accessing the person's memory in a certain way. And so that what they're looking for are not just the photos, but they actually want to, through this process, collect digital copies of people's memories of the deceased. Is that how you read this?
Yes, the idea that the photo can unlock this thing and this technology will put you inside of it. The photo is just almost like a portal to, you can visualize and have a memory of the specific moment of this snapshot in time through this photo. But what their technology will do is allow you to, I guess, more fully experience and remember what happened, who was there, what did it look like, what did it feel like. And those memories and those experiences can then somehow be extracted and we can put them on display or let others experience them as well at this memorial.
Yeah. So then it's interesting though, because as they go through this process, I don't think they find anything that's going to be usable for the purpose that the company's reached out to him for, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So he's dismissive. He like dismisses the preamble coming from the guide, meaning that I guess in there the guide was going to tell him that she was a digital copy of Carol's daughter, but he didn't listen to the preamble or whatever. So he finds out later, but it ends up being really, I think, more of almost a therapy session
yeah.
for Philip than anything that feeds into, the memorial for Carol.
Yeah, just helping him revisit. I mean, certainly this is probably what any good therapist would do, would have you relive these things so that you can contextualize them, so that you can understand your emotions and why certain things happen in certain ways. And, I don't necessarily want to jump too far ahead, but then you're left with this question of, okay, well, is Philip now better for having knowing this thing, or is he worse off than he was before, right? He was, again, sort of in this state of perhaps loneliness and a sense of sadness, but now he knows what could have been. Is that better or is that worse? Right? He has a clear vision of who she was, fuller memories of her now, but he knows what he left behind or what he could have had. And now, what do we see after he leaves the funeral? So, sort of this classic, what happens the next day, that type of scenario.
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Um, I guess to hit the plot points, um, although presumably people listening have watched the episode, right? But to
Mhm.
remind you of the plot points, it turns out that um, when Carol had gone to England to be in whatever pit orchestra playing her cello, um, so Philip did cheat on her with their bartender friend or whatever on his birthday, and like it was the only time that Carol called him, so that was a bit of a gut punch. But
Yeah.
she finds out, and so of course she's mad, but they go through with their plans of him going to visit her in London. And then as a stupid young man, he decides he's going to propose to her in a restaurant. Right? There are a few points over the course of this episode where I'm tempted to like say, okay, now here's a little life advice for all of you,
Yeah.
and this is one of them. Right? Don't do that. Don't plan a proposal in public unless you are absolutely sure she's going to say yes.
And maybe do a little bit more research than the magazine and this, seat pocket in front of you on the airplane and where you're going to go do it. That type of advice. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so he tries to do that, and then she's very sitting there stone faced or whatever, and then leaves, and of course he's just wrecked, goes and wrecks her hotel room, and then he's only finding out now, what, 25, 30 years later, that she was pregnant because she cheated on him, got pregnant, but then she wanted to keep the baby and was, so you can imagine from her perspective, particularly because he's decided to propose to her. She has like no idea how to kind of respond with this truth and just has to get out of there, right? she leaves him a note. He doesn't find the note. He's only finding out about that also here. Um, well, I mean, what is it, 30 years later or something like that? I'm not
Yeah,
sure if we
I think
actually
we're led
get
to
to,
believe it's at least 30 years, if not more, later
yeah.
uh, this happened. And yeah, just this, there's just so many elements of this sort of tragic love story where all these things are happening, but neither of them know certain things that have happened. Neither of them understand certain reasons why. Neither of them understand what they have. The only, I think, interconnected point between the two of them after after she goes off to London is that Carol called and Emma was in the room when she tried to reach Philip, right? So she makes these assumptions, but then of course Philip doesn't know what Carol did. He doesn't know that she's pregnant. He doesn't know the reasons that even if he did know that she did that, that the reasons why were because of his infidelity. So there's just all these pieces that sort of lead to this tragic love story, and it's what might have been. That, yeah, I mean, it's sort of this. Um, I don't know. I think the thing that in terms of the plot point, if we're just going through beat by beat there, that I sort of got stuck on a little bit was when did Philip go back to the hotel? When did Carol have a chance to write the note and go put it in there without him being there? Is there sort of some timelines that don't match up here? But I mean, in the end, it's all just about sort of sliding doors and what people didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the way to put it together is he proposes to her at the restaurant. She leaves. He
Mm.
insists on sitting there and drinking the bottle of champagne,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So she leaves, then writes the note, goes to his hotel room and slips under his door or whatever. Or, maybe originally the plan was that she was going to stay in that hotel room with him while he was
Mhm.
visiting. Maybe she had a key. I don't know where she left the note exactly, right? This is
Yeah.
another moment where I'm tempted to be like, okay, a little aside is for life advice. Maybe don't trust that the person got the note,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
to this degree, you know?
We don't have this problem in 2025. You just send them a text. You don't have to leave a note in a hotel room.
Yeah. Even there though, I mean there are a number of ways in which this was hitting on things in my personal experience in my past. And, even there, I don't know if you've had this experience, but I have, where I've found myself wondering, like, well, did the text message go through?
Yeah.
Like, is there any chance she didn't get the text message?
Right,
It's
right, right.
been, it's been a few days. Um, and like, I'm the kind of guy who probably will eventually try to follow up. It's like,
Yes, yes.
to actually tell me or something. Because part of the tragedy of this story here in Eulogy is that they both they both draw conclusions based on the lack of communication coming from the other person.
Hmm.
you know Now, we also don't know how the young Philip would have reacted if he had gotten the note.
Correct.
We should be careful about making too big of an assumption there.
Yeah.
Maybe he would have been an asshole about it, right? I mean,
Yeah, he could have been. He could have retaliated in a way that, again, it's so many variables that are unknown that when he if he would have read the note, would he have read it from the perspective of someone that knew that Carol knew about his own infidelity, or just seeing that she was and then being angry about that and saying, no, I don't want anything to do with you because you cheated on me? Would he have been sympathetic and said, I want to go admit my flaws? Yeah, it's just sort of this. The only thing we have to go on is never seeing it and thinking about what might have been for 30 years. Yeah, so it's just sort of this. We've had a lot of shows where we've talked about this mini world. There's so many paths that this could have taken.
yeah. So to circle back around to ultimately the question you asked before, but first, this may be a slightly different one. I think I would have to say, well, at very least, it would have been better if he'd gotten the note,
Hmm.
even if he'd responded poorly.
Yeah.
Them having it out, as it were, and actually communicating would have at least left the door open for maybe reconciliation down the line or something.
Right.
Instead, it seems she presumes that he read the note and decided, oh, I don't want to have anything to do with you.
Right.
And
Right.
he presumes that she's decided she doesn't want to have anything to do with him,
Yeah.
you know, to the point where he goes and scratches her face out of all of his photos, right?
Yeah. And
Um,
that is the end for the rest of her life, at least the end of their communication, because each of them had this assumption about the other one that ended up not being true, but it just completely broke down all hope of a relationship.
right. Yeah. So, which is sad. So then, okay, is it better to know? We're thinking from Philip's perspective. We're thinking about what he goes through in this episode. It does seem that when he gets the phone call originally, right? He says, "Oh, Carol died. That's a
Hmm.
shame. Whatever. I can't come to London for a funeral,
Right.
right?
Right.
I'm not doing that." But then is motivated enough to go along with the idea of the eulogy thing, right? So as viewers, we are slowly getting how important this relationship was. Um, we hit on how it primarily does play out more along the lines of therapy for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think reading it in that way, you asked earlier whether he's better off
Hmm.
knowing the truth now than he would have been otherwise. You asked something like that.
Yep. Yep.
And I think I'm prone to say yes, because it's on the one hand, I mean, I can see the argument that the answer is no, right? Like maybe he was happier without knowing this kind of terrible truth, because now he
Yeah.
has to recognize that there was a chance for them to be together that he totally missed, you
Yeah.
know, and certainly regret that. But on the other hand, I think that the whole process allows him reconciliation with how he feels about her and this person who is really important in his life, as
Yeah.
opposed to how for years he went through anger at her and then just kind of tried to scrub her out of his memory.
Right. Literally try to do that. And I think that I agree with you in the end because Um, his last moment with her was, I think this is important, that the last moment he had with her was her being silent in response to his proposal, not giving any response, getting up, walking away, and just that sort of reaction to what he was wanting to do, which was commit himself to her for presumably the rest of his life. So the sense of he now at least has some kind of closure on this idea that she wanted that too. There's a sense that there is going to be tremendous regret, yes, that I wasn't able to find this and recapture what we had, but I can at least now know that she wanted the same thing that I did. So is that a better place than where he was before? Or on the, on the scales, is that, way heavier, the idea that she wanted that too, than the idea of, well, now I know what could have been for 30 years and I'm going to be miserable thinking about that.
Yeah, but it's like I think it's Jacques Lacan who talks about this in terms of love. Maybe I should be referring to someone else. Anyway, people probably don't care. No, it's not a psychoanalysis podcast. But I think it's Jacques Lacan who talks about love in this weird way in which there can be this sort of retroactive movement, particularly when you're talking about a breakup or something, um, in the direction of experiencing not as hey, we loved each other and that was good, and then now we don't, but rather after the breakup, looking back and saying, oh, well, she never really loved me at all. She never cared about me, right? That the relationship itself was a lie, right? And
Right.
I think that what you get for Philip here is he has been thinking that way, and through this process discovers, no, that's not true. That there really was love here, and it just kind of tragically fell apart. So
Yeah.
at that level, I think it is, I don't know, good. for him.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I think we're on the same page with that. Yeah. I thought about this a lot, having written about it and considering this idea of, the what might have been versus what you have, and yeah, falling out on the idea of having that sense of reality. And I mean, this was her words. These are the things that she wanted him to know, that will make him, if it couldn't in the past few decades, it will make him better in the long run.
Yeah. So let's talk about the end. You had some questions about how to
Yeah.
interpret it. I take it you mean, well, what is your question? You talk about interpreting the
Yep.
ending in our notes. You love,
So
you start.
we see Philip show up to the funeral in England, and we see him walk in. We see Carol's actual daughter there playing the cello, which we know is what Carol did as well. But then I think the final shot is just sort of this pull away where we see Philip there, but every other guest that I could tell in the memorial is wearing the eulogy technology, where again, this was the same thing that they used with Philip to go inside and try to better understand or extract some of these memories and moments from these photographs. And so he walks in and he's the only one not wearing one of these. So on one hand, you could think of it as, okay, well, he was able, through what he did with the guide, he was able to go in and not just, he now has the closure of what could have been with the letter and all that, but he has a sense of, I was able to fully explore this, understand these memories, get a deeper sense of understanding of all of this that I didn't have before. So I don't need to do that now. But you could also sort of take it as just a more, maybe even darker read as, well, these people don't really have very, their memories are not great. They didn't have much to do. So they're using the eulogy technology to sort of feed themselves with other memories to try to get a better sense of who Carol was at her memorial.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should think about the very idea of the eulogy service itself, right? Because on the one hand, it might seem appealing that you can collect up memories from various people who knew the deceased, and then like you're making them digitally available to
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Um, but well, I like the contrast, I mean, I think that the episode almost gives us an argument in favor of the more traditional approach, as it were,
Yeah.
right? Because Philip is the one, he doesn't have the nubbin on, he's not doing that. No, he is there to contemplate and reflect and attend to the, the Carol's death and who
Yes.
she was as a person to him, you know,
Yeah.
as opposed to what you have to imagine is everyone else is seeing this kind of montage of
Yeah.
various people's memories. And again, I could see the potential appeal of that,
Yeah.
but it does seem noteworthy to me that Philip's not into that at all,
Right.
right? He's decided to come
Yeah.
based on this whole process, then and that's noteworthy in and of itself because originally he wasn't going to come, but then he's just interested in being there in more of an old school kind of way. So I don't know. I feel like there's more to say about that I'm not managing to get out, but hopefully I'm making sense here.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. And I also had this thought, having just been, semi recently to to a memorial or celebration of life, where I guess what is fairly common at these is, you'll show a slideshow or something, this person's
Mhm.
life. So is there a simpler explanation that's less of the, um I guess, less existential, and it's more just this is just the future of it, right? In the future, you're going to go memorial, and you're going to put a thing on your temple, and you're going to get fed sort of a real life slideshow of this person's life, and this is just, this was 5 minutes of the memorial. But while that could be taken that way, I do think it's sort of this commentary on the idea of, well, are you going there, as you said, to contemplate and remember and think about the person that you knew and the person that you experienced, or are you going there saying, Well, I just want to see what everybody else had to say about her. It's less about my experience with that person. Sort of what do you do with either side of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure what I think about the tech here,
Yeah.
because certainly I'm thinking about, well, I mean, a couple of different memorial services, but in my family where it's been a matter of, like my grandmother died, in
Hmm.
2019. And the deal was one of those things where there's a podium and people would get up and share
Yep.
memories.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and I've been to multiple services like that. So I
Yeah.
definitely see the value in that. Here we're getting kind of a technological spin on that.
Yeah.
But is it, I really don't know. Is it better, worse, or neutral to have this technologically enabled sharing of memories as opposed to um, I'm going to get up behind the podium and tell you a story,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Made me face the reality and the memory and the experience that I had, and let me share that as opposed to just absorbing things that I was never a part of. But yeah, just goes into this. You and I love an ambiguous Black Mirror ending. There's lots of different ways you can read this, I think.
Yeah, I do think though, of all the Black Mirror episodes, this one is one of the most, I don't know, positive. I mean,
Yeah.
it's sad, so it's not
Yeah.
like I would say it's,
Yeah.
it's not like it's happy or whatever, but it's primarily playing with technology and the like in the direction of, I don't know, catharsis as
Yeah.
opposed to um dystopian terror or something like
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
So
Well said. I think
I
that's
did
exactly
enjoy
right.
it. Did
Yeah.
enjoy it. You want to say something about common people in connection?
I just found a similar theme between those of this idea of both exploring the concept of, well, you're given the choice. Of course, you'd want to spend more or deeper or fuller time with the person that you love or the person that have in your life. In common people, and not to spoil that, there are some serious consequences to saying, yes, I want to spend more time with that person. Well, this one, it was sort of this. I think it's worth a debate, which we've been doing of, well, if I want to explore more of what could have been and who this person was and what sort of the door, the thing that wasn't answered back many years ago, well, that might give me some closure, but there is a consequence, there is a side effect of that as well. Just like knowing that, that knowing the what could have been. So this idea of is knowing more, is experiencing more always better? Or should we
Yeah.
be somewhat content in this idea of this is the life that we have and the experiences we've been given, and we should cherish those?
Yeah, that's interesting. I definitely think there's thematic connections there worth kind of pondering and they resonate. Or the other one, the other Black Mirror episode, which is far darker. Um, I don't know if it's darker than Common People. It might be darker than Common People. I'm thinking of the entire history of you.
Oh, okay.
So again, I don't know if do we speculate that all of the episodes are in the same world or not, or it's fuzzy at least.
Yeah.
But there, he will recall the entire history of you, which was season one or season two. I'd have to double check. It
Two,
was definitely
two
one of the
maybe.
earlier
Yeah.
episodes. And the first couple seasons are only like 3 episodes long, so. But
Yeah.
it's in there somewhere towards the beginning. If you recall, there people have the ability to access their memories technologically, like everything is being recorded and stored, and you can go back and sort of like relive things.
Yeah.
The tech there seems pretty similar to the tech here in certain ways. Um, or I guess if it is in the same universe, I would probably put this before the entire history of you, like that's a
Yeah.
further step down the line.
Yeah.
But I do wonder, with the eulogy service, okay, well, is everyone who goes to the funeral also going home with, digital copy of the
Mhm.
memories of Carol? I think that's likely the case. And anyway, I just got thinking about how the entire history of you really explores the dark side of being able to go back through all of your memories as Liam is down the rabbit hole of paranoia about his wife
Yeah.
cheating on him and all of that. Um, and maybe it's an interesting question to ask in this other sort of context if we're thinking about death and mourning and so on,
Mm.
would it be good to be
Yeah.
able to like go back and replay my memories of my deceased loved ones?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I think that would be good,
Yeah.
honestly.
There,
I don't think it would be healthy, I guess.
that's what, this is probably a good thing to tie this all together is this idea of memory, how important memory is, why we have such selective memory about things, and why certain things stand out in a greater sense in our memory than others might be just one of the I think major themes of this episode, this idea that our memories make up in many ways, like in this situation, make up the people that we know, the people that we've experienced, right? And when we try to force something or build a construct on top of those, we don't really get the true experience of how we knew that person. That's where, yeah, it's a sense of I would tie all those together in some way. And yes, episode 3 of season 1 of Black Mirror, the entire history of you.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
I wrote up when I wrote on that episode, I think it's probably still there on the comments on tvobsessive.com. I had someone who was yelling at me because I made this Lacanian claim that the paranoia, the jealousy is pathological even if you are correct. And
Yeah.
people were like, what are you talking about? Yeah, like, I think it really fits with that episode. It's like the way that Liam acts in that episode is like psychologically unhealthy, and that doesn't change just because he was right.
Right, right.
Anyway, um, anyway, sorry for the spoilers on that episode if people haven't seen it.
Yeah.
We didn't have a spoiler warning for that. We only did for Eulogy here. Anything else you want to say about Eulogy before we wrap up here?
No, I think this was great. I think very interesting addition to this season. Glad that I wrote about it. That I got to spend a lot of time with it, and yeah, this is just a real poignant look at some important topics.
Yeah, yeah, I enjoyed it as much as
Yeah,
one enjoys a
yeah,
kind of
exactly.
punch in the gut. But it was very, very emotional for me and probably for everyone. So it was a good episode. All right. Well, thanks always for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. If so, please do give a good rating, review, all that good stuff. If you're on YouTube, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Really appreciate it. We'll be back next week, continuing to talk about Black Mirror with the sequel to USS Callister into Infinity. I I constrained myself and didn't make the electric boogaloo joke. USS Callister 2. Anyway, that was pretty good. You can check out my article on that episode if you want to before you listen. That's up on tvobsessive.com. Do check out the website. We have articles on every episode of Black Mirror if that's what you're looking for, along with written work on any number of other TV shows. You follow the site on social media, search for TV Obsessive, and we'll be back with you next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it. See you then.